Welcome to Editorial viewers. This is the ATN News Weekly where we talk life. At Editorial, we talk to the experts who shed light on issues that question us. I'm Richard Moreno, your host, and my guest at this time is Dr. Ashikur Rahman, Senior Economist, Policy Research Institute. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you.
We have to start with our budget, proposed budget as yet, which will have become effective by the time Editorial goes on air after a week. Sir, your reflections on the proposed budget.
Well, thank you. I think the finance minister has been very blunt that it is an ambitious agenda, but it is a much needed agenda. And given our economic expectations are very high, and the challenges that faces our economy are also acute, there are a lot of infrastructure needs and there are a lot of financial needs in many sectors. I think we cannot avoid the temptation or the necessity of going for a big budget. So I think we have a very ambitious revenue target, much needed target, and given our size of the budget is very small in certain contexts. For example, our budget is only 15% of our GDP, whereas India's budget is 25% of GDP. Generally, a welfare state like Germany will have a budget which is 40% of GDP. A country like US will have a budget which is roughly 25% of GDP. So if you compare our country's budget with other countries, our state has a very low expenditure as a share of GDP. So there is a definite need to expand our budget to at least the 25% threshold.
Sir, our business bodies, especially
Yes.
the FBCCI,
Yes.
has been crying hoarse regarding proposals that it had put forward but were not incorporated in the proposals. How do you feel is the finance minister going to work on these?
Well, there are clear areas where probably fine-tuning is possible. MCCI, FBCCI have all proposed a lot of changes. I'm sure some of them can be accommodated because a budget is a human document. It is subjected to flaws and errors. So which I guess if some of the proposals are logical, then they should be accommodated. But one thing must be accepted, that Bangladesh does not have a good tax base. We have a very low tax to GDP ratio. Probably our tax to GDP ratio is something around 9 or 9.5%. Countries like Afghanistan are lower than us, which basically means we are among one of the very few countries in the world which has such a low tax base. So I do believe that much work is needed on expanding our tax base.
Sir, our National Board of Revenue is kind of getting what you call it, a label of being unable to perform, to deliver.
I would disagree with that. I think NBR has been working hard. I think NBR is trying to expand our tax resources, but I feel that much more investment in training and technical capacity is needed for the NBR. There was a study which showed that if you invest 65 pence in NBR, the return is 100 taka, which basically means that NBR as an organization needs much more capacity development, needs much more manpower, needs much more technological support than what it currently has. Because you see, if you go by the estimate of our middle income group within the country, there are two estimates. One suggests that our middle class is roughly 11 million, Boston Consulting Group, tax payable middle class. The other estimate suggests that our middle class is roughly 25 to 29 million. Now if you go with the lower bound, which means 11 million people should be paying taxes, we both know that the number of people paying taxes probably 1.2 million, which is indicative that we have what, 90% tax evasion. So this is a huge social crisis.
So 92,000 crore is expected to be, our deficit.
92,000.
Yes, and how do you think will the government bring in this money?
I think every year it has a standard formula that it borrows money from the bank, from the savings certificates, and some are financed by international support. I think this is a standard practice. Our budget deficit has never crossed the 5% of GDP threshold, which has shown that we have been very pragmatic and prudent. So I don't think it is a big problem. What is a big problem is that our national savings certificates are paying an interest rate of 10 to 11%. The government is not rationalizing or fixing or downgrading the interest rate of the savings certificate. That means we are effectively borrowing at the government is borrowing at a very high interest rate, where internationally now you can borrow at a very cheap interest rate.
So you advocate, lowering interest rates on certificates?
Of course, because this is clearly a political economy problem. We all know that certain segment of politicians and bureaucrats have invested in these savings certificates, and they don't want the interest rate on these certificates to go down, which in turn implies that they pressurize the government to ensure that the interest rate stays above 11%. How does this make any sense? Well, the market interest rate for my deposits is hovering around 5 to 6%. The national savings certificates are giving me an interest rate of 10 to 11%. This is a clear distortion, probably manipulated by interest groups for their own gain.
So, sir, now the finance minister seems to be upbeat about a beefed up NBR in comparison to what it was.
Yes.
So, has he set his sights on anything specific?
Well, what I am happy about is finally we know what to target. I think we, as a nation, we go around wishy-washy topics, but I think finance minister now knows that what we have to do is expand the capacity of our
So we'll come back
NBR.
right to this place.
Yes.
It's very interesting, but we need the commercial now.
Please.
Viewers, we take the commercial now. Stay with us. Don't go away. Welcome back, viewers. Welcome back to Editorial, and my guest, Dr. Ashikur Rahman, Senior Economist, Policy Research Institute. Welcome back, Doctor.
Thank you.
And we talk about what you were going to finish.
So I think if I may close this by saying that I think finance minister has rightly targeted NBR to enhance our tax base, and I think this is a much needed development. If we have to finance our development needs, our infrastructure needs, our needs in social sectors like healthcare and education, there is no alternative to better revenue mobilization performance.
So now shifting the spotlight a little, Britain's exit from the European Union. So it's a historic decision. And how do you feel will be the global impact economically, basically?
Well, first of all, I think Britain was known for its common sense, but I think they have surrendered their common sense to petty nationalism and aggressive xenophobia. I think what we have witnessed is probably a collateral, a decision that has a huge collateral loss. Already $2 trillion has been wiped off from the capital market across the globe. That is the size of the Indian GDP. I think Britain's economy is under pressure. I think the European economy is under pressure. There is no good news attached to it. I think what is very upsetting is that if we have learned anything from 500 years of human history, we know that politics based on aggressive nationalism, politics based on racism, politics based on religion has never helped human societies. But unfortunately, if you see what is happening in US, if you see what is happening in UK, we are allowing these old failed political ideologies to become mainstream political ideologies, and certain people banking on fear, banking on anxiety, are trying to divide the world in harsher terms. It will definitely have global implications. Bangladesh will probably take a hit, but not too much maybe, depends on kind of the trade agreements that we can negotiate with Britain outside EU, but a weaker EU, a weaker Britain is bad for us as a globe, as a species, because we need united efforts on climate change and many other issues. I think this will weaken our collective approach to many common threats that many countries face.
So there have been comments like it's just the drawbridge has just been pulled out. That means it's just a vacuum. Does it mean that business will go on as usual for Britain and the rest of the EU?
No, it can't. It can't, because see, for example, it will first affect the trade between UK and EU. The EU had a free flow of goods and labor. That is no longer possible. So export from UK to EU and EU to UK will take a hit. We don't know what kind of protective measures will UK take. Will they think about making a wall, protect, and pretend that they can save the economy by restricting trade and restricting investments? We don't know yet. We have to see how this transition plays out. I hope Britain understands the magnitude of this decision. I think it is wrong to call such decision democratic, because only 70% people voted, and that basically means that this entire decision was taken by 36% people, which essentially means that you're taking a decision that has far-reaching implications, a complex decision that is done on a purely simple majoritarian principle. Now you see, even in Bangladesh, if you have to change the constitution, you need 2/3 majority. In US, you need to go through much more higher layers of checks and balances, because the idea is that when you're trying to change the basic character of a political contract, you need the masses involved and you need to be very cautious. Unfortunately, such degree of caution was not shown in this context. People, and Prime Minister David Cameron, it's probably his worst legacy. Conservative Party has built a political capital on Euroscepticism over last 2 decades. I think this is a snake that they have created, and it has bitten Britain bad. That's what I can say.
So our expats and immigrants in Britain, how is this going to impact their lives?
Well, again, we don't know, right? We don't know where it will stop, because this Brexit, quote unquote, was done on the immigration card. Now, will that card be again played against immigrants who are there now? Will Bangladeshi labor or people or students will be treated in a different way? We don't know where this fear and xenophobia stops. So this is a Pandora's box. We don't know, because one can see that Scotland will have a referendum. So Scotland might now choose independence, which means that England and Wales will be living together. Now we just don't know how they will interact with the globe. I think we are in uncharted waters now.
So there are also talks of referendum of other countries to move now from what we may safely call this 27 country bloc, which was 28 with Britain.
Yes.
So France also. So how do you feel if they withdraw, if they retract? What will be the situation?
Well, it will be very upsetting, because Europe achieved a lot. The idea of Europe achieved a lot. This is a continent where millions died for petty wars, for wars based on religion and nationalism. And finally, after Second World War, they created a political union that stopped hard, intense political conflict. Now, to undermine that and go back to those old ways is just dogma. It's just bad dogma, bad faith in bad ideologies. I personally feel it's a great loss. I feel, but one thing, coming back to your question, I feel that the economic implication that we are seeing now might stop other countries from doing that, because Britain is getting hit. If France leaves, France will get hit. So I think now we are beginning to understand the real cost of leaving, because previously it was all an estimate, all an educated guess. But now, if Britain leaves and Britain takes a downturn, goes into recession, that will stop other countries from leaving Europe because they don't want to replicate the blunder Britain has done.
So we have to see and wait for the results.
Oh, yes.
And sir, on this note, it's been a very interesting discussion, but we have to come to the end of this edition.
Thank you very much.
Viewers, we have come to the end of this edition of Editorial, but stay tuned to ATN News for another edition next Sunday. I'm your host, Richard Moreno, signing off.